This abomination obviously is just the worst. In a good way, if you like things that you also hate. While this guy, or well, gal, being a Lovecraftian giant fish amalgamation existing in an ocean of blood on a faraway moon is obviously insane. I can't help but ask myself, if this thing did hypothetically exist, how would it even live? I'm going to be dissecting this horror and explaining what this thing actually is from the inside out, and if it's even possible. And an unexpected conclusion I have come to after all of my research that you'll want to hear. This is the study of the biology, morphology, and plausibility of the entity of iron lung, something I like to call plausology. Now, this entity, whose name is Ellie, is basically, well, spoiler warning real quick, is the result of a god from another dimension making contact with their own. Well, there's some moving parts to that topic, but the point is that this thing is not natural at all. Or is it? While it's not natural to our world, it is a product of another dimension that seemingly has its own nature, in some ways similar to our own. So Ellie can still be formed by the nature of both the other dimension and our own, which is why it takes the form and structure that it does, and is clearly a living, breathing entity that we can dissect. Now, to analyze the biology of something so insanely alien, we need to start with the absolute basics. What does this thing need to live, and how can it get those things from its environment? Starting with food and water. Maybe it can just survive off of the blood ocean itself, the way sanguivores, or animals that drink blood, do in real life. In a way, filter feeding the protein that's all around it. Animals like vampire bats can survive and use blood for energy exclusively. A study by a Kenneth Welch in 2024 found that vampire bats set to running on a treadmill could synthesize energy for their activity quickly from the amino acids in the proteins in their muscles, from the blood that they consumed just before running, which for most other animals would need to be energy like carbohydrates and lipids, proving that this is an effective and viable possibility for the entity. But there are problems with this theory. Looking at the morphology of the entity, much like Epstein, its structure is clearly built to be some form of predator. I mean, just the teeth alone tell you that it's hungry for something alive, but the size and shape of its mouth also indicate that it is made to eat large prey. In fish comparison, the proportions are that of a predatory largemouth bass rather than a non-predatory carp. And its esophagus reminds me of a crocodilian, which is maybe a strange thing to say, but it is made with the capability of swallowing large things, just like your mom. Now, it could technically still do both, as simply living in an ocean of blood would require similar metabolic traits to that of sanguivores. It would need the same bacteria microbiome that vampire bats have in their gut, that allows them to process the excess blood entering their body, regardless of if the blood was its main source of food. It would also lack the gene that in other animals helps them absorb iron, Rep15, as it would need no iron from its diet at all. Blood obviously being rich in iron and being surrounded by it 24/7. It would actually need to get rid of iron. Like many sanguivores, the intestinal lining would also be made with special cells that absorbs iron and then releases from the intestinal wall into waste to be expelled from the body, preventing iron toxicity. And at the same time, a similar process would be happening in the kidneys, where iron and other waste is removed from fluids to extract usable water for hydration. But if it is built like an anglerfish, made to eat things that don't want to be eaten, then what does it really eat? We don't get any direct examples of what this thing eats in the movie or game. It chews on subs, but like Jared subs, they don't qualify as food. But there are still signs of other living things in the Great Blood Ocean. Skeletons, and in the game, eyes that clearly belong to something other than the entity. Potentially a sparse ecosystem similar to our own abyssal deep ocean biomes. Sparse, but populated. Real quick, no ads. I do all of my own art, editing, writing, etc. So a hype, comment, like would help immensely. And again, not an ad, I get $0, pesos, rubies, whatever. Just a shout out to a friend, Raul. He is a YouTube analytic that makes tools for YouTubers. Amongst other things, his project Edison creates extensive direct comparison reports between your videos and other videos in your niche that are successful. And it identifies what their videos are doing right and what your videos can do to be more successful. He's a great guy who does great work and he's helped me out. So if you need some constructive criticism, there's a link in the description. And again, I get nothing from this except the warm feeling of helping a friend. And a quick shout out to my brother. He likes to make music and I've used some of his tracks in this video. So if you're interested in that, his channel is linked in the description as well. Now back to the disgusting, freaky fish. So blood is obviously not transparent. In fact, you wouldn't be able to see something an inch away from your face if you were in a blood ocean. This is addressed in the movie.
It's not a normal camera. You can't see through blood, so you need x-rays to get through.
But this leaves a big problem for us. If it can't see, why does the entity have eyes? If something were to live in an ocean of blood, it would certainly use echolocation, similar to the way near-blind species of bats do. It also works extremely well in liquids being used by marine mammals like dolphins and whales, and would realistically be about the only viable option in this scenario. Now, there are some animals that can see in other wavelengths like infrared, ultraviolet, and even polarized light, but none of those wavelengths would really pass through blood either. So the eyes don't really seem to make a lot of sense, unless we jump to a form of sensory that's not seen in our nature at all, which because of this topic is technically an option, it being from another dimension. So maybe it can see wavelengths like X-ray or other forms of radiation that might be passing through the blood ocean. The next question I have is how it would breathe. In water, fish have gills, but in an ocean of blood, well, you would still just need gills. Adapted to thicker blood over water, but the principle would be the same. A thin layer of skin between the oxygen-rich water, or blood, on the outside, and the oxygen-depleted blood cells inside the body, allowing the interior cells to absorb the oxygen from outside and circulate it through the body. In this case, the entity looks to have both normal side gills, but also seems to have external gills, with a branching structure similar, albeit different, to external gills seen in axolotls, which allows a lot of surface area for oxygen absorption. So it eats, it breathes? Or thankfully, maybe not. This is where things become very alien. If you have seen the movie, you know, spoiler, it was created with the crew of a submarine, their bodies mutating and combining after making contact with the ocean's blood, forming the entity we see on screen. This obviously throws biological analysis into total chaos. The morphology clearly aligns with fish, but genetically, partially or almost completely is actually human, evidenced by the human arms and legs hanging off of the side of the body. So this thing doesn't reproduce, which is for the best 100%. But that calls into question all of the other remains of creatures in the ocean that look similar to the entity. They could all be former crews who met a similar fate, but why they are dead now is completely unknown. So maybe the timeline should give us some answers, but unfortunately just creates more questions. To be concise, there are 2 moons with blood oceans that humanity has been exploring, and there are only 5 subs known to be used. The first is confirmed to have gone to the other moon not seen in the film. Then there is the SM-8 that was turned into the entity. Lastly, the 5th is the one used in Iron Lung, leaving 2 subs unaccounted for. We don't even know which moon they were used on or when they were sent. We do know that the SM-8 was sent in 2353, and Iron Lung happens in 2370, which makes Ellie 17. But what this means for us is that we don't know definitively if the skeletons seen are of previous subcrews or not. But could it be possible that the entity is made of people, but it was made to mirror something that already existed in the other dimension? That could explain why there are similar skeletons in the blood ocean of these fish, and also why the crew was made into that form to begin with. This theory might have some credence. In the movie, the entity says to the main character Simon, "An ignorant god sees a sliver of our universe through a pinhole, and it thinks it understands all that is and all that will be, and it will, because a god makes sense of what it sees despite what it should be." The last line to me implies that it makes what it sees in our world into something that it understands from its. It makes sense of what it sees, and it does this despite what it should be, implying change. Basically, this god from another dimension has a rift that it can look and reach through into our world, and when it does, it alters what it sees into what it knows. My implication being that Ellie's blueprint is possibly based on something that already existed in that other dimension, and could be the source of the skeletons. But this is just a theory. This brings me to the bizarre realization that I didn't expect. I had been avoiding spoilers before this came out on YouTube somewhat recently, so I was unaware of some of the theories that were being shared. So while I was researching animals that drink blood, I kept coming across the fact that they use anticoagulants to keep blood flowing from their hosts. Because when blood leaves the body, it starts to clot and coagulate, which allows bleeding to stop. It got me thinking about the ocean of blood itself. You have this massive amount of blood just sitting on this moon rock completely exposed. It would certainly coagulate. This would change everything. You see, the blood would separate as it clots. The liquid plasma would rise to the surface while the blood cells would fall below as they solidify. The result would be a dark red, thick sludge at the bottom with the thin, clear liquid plasma above. Not at all what we see in the iron lung. The only way that this moon could be covered in the bright red liquid blood that we see is if it still has the anticoagulants that a living body would give it, the same way that your blood stays liquid when it's in your body, which means that the blood must be circulated by something living that is capable of circulating an entire ocean. This can mean only one thing. The moon itself is alive. It is in fact no moon at all, but at least on the interior, a mass of flesh and blood that likely has fissures deep in its surface oceans that draw in and push out massive quantities of blood from a living, beating heart deep within its core. As always, I want to know what you guys think down in the comments. This is one of those fictional universes that sparks a lot of interesting possibilities, and I think that has a lot to do with its success beyond the games and movies. And don't take anything I've said here too seriously. I don't think the creators of the game or the movie were really thinking about the plausible biology of their giant blood ocean fish monster. I just think it's fun to think about. But if you enjoyed the video, please sub, hype, or like it. It would mean the world. And as always, thanks for watching.